Jackass could be like a really good.
Sounds like we're going live.
Yeah, we are. Jackass could be a really good churn reducer.
We're 10 minutes early this week. It's 10:20 a.m. on the West Coast, 1:30 p.m. on the East Coast. This is Value After Hours. I'm Tobias Carlisle. I'm joined as always by Bill Brewster and Jake Taylor. What is happening, fellas?
We're just discussing Paramount. They also got Mean Girls. Mean Girls, you could watch that over and over again. So they got some stuff.
Yeah, we're 10 minutes early to make up for all the times that we've been late.
Well, actually, I got to bounce 10 minutes early. So
Okay.
that's actually the reason.
Come on, Bill. I was trying to get us some extra credit here
Noted.
with the
Noted.
10.
This is a wacky market, fellas. I was on Friday. I thought there was a pretty good chance we'd go through that my 20% year-on-year real bear market drawdown, but we had the
bear.
monster rally.
Build-A-Bear.
Yeah, the Build-A-Bear.
We haven't gotten there yet?
No, it was close. It was like because last year the market ramped from today through until the end of the year. And I thought that would make it hard because we'll get that with the market going up. That means we have to rally
Similarly.
commensurately, to avoid a 20% bear at this point. But we've got off to a good start on Monday. We really came out of the gates strongly.
There you
So
go.
we'll see.
They don't want you to be happy. I'm sorry.
It's a totally arbitrary. Yeah, it's like Lucy with a football. It's a totally arbitrary mark. There's nothing magical about it at all. I just for like
For fun.
because it happens so infrequently. Like the thing is, there have been 50 days since 1953 in the S&P 500.
Where value outperform. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can't miss those 50 days where we were actually where it was one day below, and then there have been like 12 weeks, and there have been just a handful of months, and then longer than that is like vanishingly small. You know all those dates. It's like 73 for the dot-com bust and the
2008.
GFC. So if we go into it, it's remarkable. It's notable.
But we didn't.
No, we didn't. I'll let everybody know when it happens.
Oh yeah,
I'll send off that Ron Paul "It's Happening" flare. The one where he's really happy.
Yeah, it's always funny.
Well, I'm in a bear market, so I got that.
Yeah.
Personal bear.
Yeah.
Russell 1000 got into it on Friday,
Mm.
but and the Nasdaq's already in it. But the Nasdaq's always looking like it's going to go into it. It's feast or famine in the Nasdaq.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Billy,
it
what
is.
what you got on tap for today?
I don't know. LFG got taken out. Inflation Reduction Act winner. We got good bank earnings. American Airlines is posting 13% revenue increases year over year, or they say they're going to. It's the world may end soon, but not yet.
Ooh.
Bad for stocks. Got to sell everything.
I don't think we're going to say anything smarter than what you just said.
Let me give a shout out to, because we got some good. I just like saying these place names.
Where are they
Halifax, York in the UK, Braunschweig in Germany.
This is like a geography test every week. Like
I mean, it's better than invading the place to find out the name. We just get them to put their name in here. Seacoast, Lisbon, Portugal. Shout out to the Portuguese. I've been loving a book on Portugal. It's called Conquerors, something like that. Wonder if there's any value investing in buying pro sports teams. Yeah, there's a Spanish investing group that invests in pro sports teams.
broken down sports teams.
Well, they're value investors in sports, and they like to buy professional sports teams. You know, the ones that are publicly traded. I think they've done pretty well.
Wow, that's a real nice, probably inequality play there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Smart.
Because they do well, and because they just always do well.
Well,
No,
it's
'cause-
just rich people trading sardines.
Yeah, rich people
But
wanting
these
to
are public.
outcompete each other for ego.
These are public companies. Like they have to be. They have to trade on the fundamentals somewhat, don't they?
No.
Somewhat.
No, no, they don't. They absolutely don't.
You're not going to get $100 billion soccer team anytime soon. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. They're big.
I mean,
businesses,
Man
guess.
U, I guess, traded on some fundamentals, but like,
For 100?
I mean, I think you trade them on takeout value minus however long you think it's going to take to take them out, plus some margin of safety, and that's how you price it. I don't think you're looking at cash flow.
But you buy them when they're beaten up on cash flow. and then you sell them when they go and win whatever league they're in, because it's a random number generator that eventually their number comes up. I know that because I supported this terrible rugby team, and Brisbane Reds finally got there after breaking my heart for years and years, back to the bottom of the table.
The Pats would say differently, sir.
Ooh, dynastic.
Let's see. That's the
culture.
I don't think you can. I don't think that history is going to be the defining factor there.
Yeah.
Looks like it was TB all the way.
Oh, I don't know. That's a bit
TB12.
premature for that.
I mean, the dude's been in the league for 20 years. What are you waiting to see what else he puts on his resume?
Well, Matt Castle came in and did 13-3 there. So it's not as if like they haven't won with another quarterback.
He was I like his Twitter bio used to be family and football, and now it's just football.
Oh, that's gangster. Poor Tom. Feel bad for him.
Gotta leave those kids too. That's tough. I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends how they were acting that week.
Momentarily. You can do that all the time.
Tell us you have young kids at home without telling us you have.
Yeah, that's right. I've had terrorists enter my bed the last 2 nights.
Oh yeah.
We got an earache going on. My sleep score on my sleep last night was 35%, which is last I checked failing. I failed at sleep.
Yeah, I got sick kids too. It's there's too many in the bed every night.
So then I can't go to sleep, right? So I start reading. I go back in. This little fucker's got his legs completely taking up my bed space. I was like, what are you doing?
Sleep perpendicular, little.
Yeah.
Bastards.
Yeah. Feet in the back all night. You're just having dreams that you're falling off ledges.
Yeah.
What do you got? What do you got on tap today, JT?
Well, nothing that interesting. I'm going to hit back into our. So last week we talked about this great progression of 2025 to 2050. And we had we teased it with some 10 possible derailers of progress.
Oh yeah.
So we'll run through those, and then I also
it's much more on brand for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got to get those
up.
Those macro doom ratings with the 10. And then so I'm going to supplement it with a little bit from this book called Immoderate Greatness: Why Civilizations Fail. So that'll be fun.
Nice.
And then I'll tie it all together with a fun little story about the world ending, and we'll see if we can torture our way back into the market from all
this. Should I go get a drink now, or should I wait and then just get really drunk?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've
do both.
I thought you were pre-partying.
No, I can't. Not today, but
so
it's going to make me depressed.
I've got 2. I got a quote from Cathie Wood.
Oh, good. I don't get enough of these.
And I'm going to contrast that with how do you say it? Charles Akre? Is it Acre or Akre?
Akre.
So Akre, from their latest letter, from their Q3 2022, from the Focus Fund, just to stick them side by side, just to
shout out to Chuck. I'm sure he's one of the 10.
Just to see, no doubt.
You think Chuck's
he gets the
just
transcript
back?
at least?
No, Chuck's listening in real time. He's retired.
Yeah. Well, let's kick it off.
Let's start it out with Chuck and Cathie.
All right. So let's just do them one at a time. So Cathie says disruptive innovation is valued in the $7 trillion to $8 trillion range.
What does that mean? All of her stuff that she likes is,
I think so,
$7 trillion market cap.
By 2030, we think that goes to 210 trillion. That's a 30-fold increase. That doesn't seem possible, but look at what Tesla has done. Tesla is a microcosm of what's going to happen.
Oh my God, this hurts my brain. Okay, let's keep going.
I think that's prophetic. Tesla is a microcosm of what's going to happen. We'll see. So this is Akre. He says investors will only recoup bear market losses the same way those losses were incurred by owning equities. This truism has one caveat. Losses suffered in profitless and speculative story stocks may prove permanent in many cases. Who you got?
Bang. Whoopsies.
I think
choose your
Akre's
fighter,
comment.
Bill.
Akre's comment is like that is the case. If you go back to 2000, and this was one of the papers that I put out a few months ago, that I retweeted, not that I wrote it myself, but And I forget who wrote it now, but they showed they had the three buckets of, they had the profitless tech from 2000 declined 90% and then flatlined totally. And then the second wave was the market leading tech that also suffered the big decline, and then the rest of the market followed. And I'd say their prediction has turned out to be pretty much the case. Like that's what we saw, right? We saw the market fall over after those other two went. So that's probably a reasonable description of what is going to happen. So I think Akre is probably right on the money.
It starts at the periphery, like the furthest storytelling, and works its way towards the actual real businesses eventually.
Do you think that's the periphery? Like when the market's running up, isn't that ground zero? Isn't that what everybody's in, the speculative stuff?
I kind of meant periphery on as far as
value,
sustainability.
Profit.
Maybe some version of intrinsic
Most
value.
speculative,
I don't know.
yeah.
Or even time horizon might be the better way to frame it. Like as we work backwards from a multiple of revenue, and then people start working on, maybe EBITDA, and then they work to EBIT, and then they work to maybe, net income, and then they work to the balance sheet, and now it's cash. Like, how long can this company survive? So,
yeah,
we shall see how those horizons change over time, and how that the discounting becomes more hyperbolic.
Do you think the tell might have been the letter to the Fed?
What?
That
Cathie?
is, yeah. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if you're,
yes, you do.
We've talked about this a little bit before, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody. But when everything's going against you, it does feel like it's the Fed. It's certainly not anything that you're doing,
Yeah.
The Fed ate my homework.
I guess this is what I think about the Fed. I wrote a little Twitter thread on this today. They have a dual mandate, right? You have employment and inflation.
Employment of econ PhDs? Is that what?
No, shush.
Oh,
just
okay.
So this is the dual mandate. I mean, everybody bitches about these guys. We've been through COVID. The world has not ended. Our economy is too good. That's the fundamental problem. Yes, we have inflation. They're trying to break the back of inflation because people smarter than me tell me that inflation is what takes down central banks. The employment picture has not cracked. Somebody's out there screaming, it's lagging, it's lagging. I fucking get it. I know. So, I mean, people are still traveling. Some labor is going back to normalized, but I have heard anecdotally that people have gone from swinging hammers to back to serving dinners. That's probably a decent thing. Yes, we are going to slow down housing. That's the explicit goal here. But I don't understand why what they're doing are they probably going to overdo it? Yes. Is it an imperfect institution? Yes. But they're doing what they should do. So, Cathie, if you own shit that has a 30-year duration and all of a sudden people hike interest rates on it, you're going to get a drawdown. If you're right, you're going to be fine. So, let them do their job. They don't care about your portfolio, and be right. That's what I think.
I think that whatever they do now, and I think that probably hiking interest rates is the right thing to do at the moment. But the problem has been sown over the last 10 or 20 years, and probably earlier than that, but particularly over the last 10 or 20 years, as we've just printed and kept interest rates pinned at zero. It's just in no way, there's just no possibility that zero interest rates. If you think about it from the perspective of a businessman or businesswoman, business person, nobody's going to lend out money on a risk, take risk lending out money for no return. It just doesn't happen in the real world. The only way you get that is if you got somebody leaning heavily on the scale and controlling the money supply.
Yeah,
and that's what creates all the silliness.
Speculating
it is, but I don't like
appreciation of
but it doesn't matter what you like. Your opinion matters as much as Cathie's.
But I think it's bad for society. That's my problem with it.
I mean, you got to play the game.
But of course I am. I'm going to survive in the game, whatever happens. I'm going to be okay. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the other 50% of the population who are below the median income.
Well, the good news is the people that were above the median locked in their payments on their houses when rates were low. And now the people that are trying to come up get to buy houses at lower prices. So we all win. You just can't look at you can't capitalize your wealth on your house and say, oh, I can go spend this. Well, here's a shocker. A house isn't a trading asset.
Plenty of people in California feel differently.
Yeah. He
Well,
locked
those
my
people
way
are going
to
to get
riches.
fucked. But
And in Vegas.
This isn't a new story, right? This is an asset. It's some form of an asset liability mismatch. You incurred an asset that has a 20-year duration and you treated it as if it was a 6-month asset. So you're screwed. Sucks. Next.
But they're sort of encouraged into it. Like, it's not, when it happens systematically, they're encouraged into it. It's not like it's any individual who's made a silly decision when it's happening en masse. Like somebody has created the conditions. An entity has created those conditions.
Greed.
Sure, but
these
like,
secondary, tertiary flipping markets. Look, I'm super long housing. I'm fine. I'm not losing any sleep over it. I'm losing sleep over my little kids, but not my investments. And we'll see. Like, maybe we actually do have to print our way out of this, and real assets actually do
I think that's
protect
the only
you,
way
and
out.
housing works.
Sorry,
Russell
JT.
Napier had a piece that's been making the rounds.
Barry
came out.
tweeted it out too. Barry
So-
got there after you.
Oh, really?
I saw.
Yeah. And in it, he makes an interesting point that we probably don't talk about enough. And that is that the Fed is the monetary half of the coin, but there's a fiscal half of the coin as well. That is what the government does. And $1 trillion deficits, interest rates rising for government debt that has to be serviced, cost of living adjustments for retirees that the government is on the hook for. All of those things seem to be quite inflationary to me. I mean, it's very stimulative. Like, we can have the Fed backing off and raising rates, but then if you're still running $1 trillion deficits, if you're forgiving student debt, all these things, I think, are kind of like we're driving around with the brakes on and jamming the gas pedal at the same time. And the lack of coordination there, to me, seems kind of silly. And like, there should be more of a coordinated response if we're going to delude ourselves into thinking that we can control this quote unquote machine that is the economy, then at least you would think that you would want to like kind of be on the same page.
Don't we want them independent,
Supposed to have an independent Fed. I mean, imagine if Biden came in and replaced Jay Powell because he was nominated under Trump, and then his Fed official was keeping rates low. What people would say.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want to keep it low while you're in I mean,
that's why Trump used to berate the Fed every day while he pumped the stock market because he needed a bubble, like his personal net worth. Anyway, I digress. Sorry for people that like him.
Do you think the issue is the mandate? Like, I think the dual mandate is silly. I think what the Fed should do, which is what it was set up to do, when you have bank runs, so that no individual bank is taken out by. I mean, we can talk about the fact that all of these banks are insolvent all the time, and that's a problem. But they are. Like, they literally they can't. If everybody shows up and asks for their money back on one day, that's the definition. As and when you can't pay your debts, as and when they fall due, you're bankrupt. But that's not how we run the economy. We've decided for whatever reason that we're going to run our banks this way. So when you have a bank run, they should be able to. They have a central bank that they all own that coordinates the liquidity between them to stop that thing from happening. So everybody who lines up out the door gets paid. That's what it should do. And instead, we've given it like employment and asset price stability, which nobody can control.
Climate change, throw that on there too.
Yeah. These are things that the central bank can't control. And it's silly to pretend that they can.
Yeah.
Capital should be readily available and very expensive.
I don't know. I think they've done a good job over the last 2 years. Shoot me if you want. I think they kept rates low, probably
quite
too
possible.
long.
I'm not sure I disagree with you, but it's the 10 years before that where I take umbrage that they could have been making room to have more options, and
they're trying to do it now. That's what they're trying to do. He's trying to create headspace now so that when we really get the flush, then they can pull the interest rates down. But if you look back at the experience of every other time that the market's fallen over, they've done that closer to the top, honestly, and the market's then proceeded down for more than like a year after that. So what the Fed does in the chaos won't make much difference.
Yeah. Well, we won't have inflation if the chaos ensues.
Well, we
so
could.
We'll have done
we'll
their
have
job.
both. We can have both.
Nah.
You can have
Dude,
CPI
China's going to
inflation.
implode, man. I mean, the macro backdrop is not pretty right now.
I saw that they didn't release their numbers.
Yeah. I mean, China,
Is that
they're
right?
You can just not do that, evidently.
talking about invading Taiwan. Shit is fucked up over there. That's a scientific term.
Yeah, I don't know how
Europe,
you handicap that
Where's
stuff.
demand coming from in Europe
Speaking of
over the next 12
handicapping,
months?
what have you guys seen this like 25% chance of nuclear engagement?
I don't want
let's
to talk
say?
about
Is
it.
that minutes to midnight thing? Like they always, it's always 1 minute to 30 seconds to midnight, 1 second to midnight.
You know what bothers me about that is like I couldn't tell you what the odds are that my wife's going to make chicken for dinner tonight, and yet
Yeah,
you are
25%.
on the in. Yeah, you can come up with like 25% in a somebody who's got their finger hovering over the button, and you somehow can untangle this whole like convoluted geopolitical mess. I find it to be irresponsible actually to say those kinds of
I
things.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Tim Dillon had a good podcast about this. I don't know that I agree with what he said, but he had a funny podcast about it.
Is that right?
Shocked me. Yeah, he was just like, I'm not even going to say it. You can listen to him. But
The
his
fact that
point
there's
was
so
like,
many-
we're really going to like amplify ourselves into nuclear war over like this.
we're just going
I
to get
kind of-
ourselves all fired up about it. It's all politics is domestic. They're not talking to all politics is domestic. It's all about what's going on at home, both sides. And but to go back to that nuclear that who knows when the US has lost nuclear weapons, and I would say the US is more responsible in tracking its nuclear weapons than almost any other country in the world. We don't know where a lot of the nuclear weapons are. It's inevitable that one gets blown up. It's inevitable. It's scary. Like they could do it over a heavily populated city just by blowing up you can make it a dirty bomb by just blowing up the bomb and like not actually setting it off in a nuclear, like just spreading the nuclear waste all over the place. Awful. Horrifying.
Wow, it's stimulative though. You got to rebuild all the houses.
That's that broken window fallacy.
Oof.
I'm not going to
All
let
right,
that run on this
Krugman,
podcast
let's
anymore.
just
I figured that would trigger you both. You're welcome.
Yeah, Caleb Proctor says 25% chance of nuclear showdown is high enough that I'd not come to work tomorrow. I agree.
Oh man, we
Yeah,
should
that's
just
not great.
let's get into my topic. We're too close to it already, so it'll be
Yeah, that
Let's-
works. It seems
do
like
it.
something that can
Yeah.
derail the progress.
All right. So I'm gonna like bang through these 10 derailers of progress, and then we're gonna get to like the more fun part of the story. But if, as you recall, this was from what was the guy's name? Peter Leydon, and he had all this kind of I'm not gonna call it magical thinking, but hopefully rosy scenarios that I'm I think we're all praying come about. But here's what might derail that progress. Number one. Liberal democracies fail. Basically, we have a hard time like effectively carrying out actual will of the majority because of structural problems within our democracies that make it hard. Like we're kind of being divided and conquered a little bit by our political parties. Quasi-civil war. Or number two, zealots on both sides. They get desperate and start talking about civil war, and it leads into actual political violence. Maybe January 6th is somewhat of a precursor of that idea.
Those three are basically the same thing, right? There's just problems with democracy, and that's since democracy's existed, that's been the case. But and I don't think he's wrong, but sometimes I think those things might be good things. But keep on going.
Number three, enforced groupthink. Zealots on the far left take cancel culture too far and stifle open debate, and then we end up with less of a pluralistic society. I think that's
What does pluralistic mean?
I think in this context, like wealth, like well articulated, like on multiple sides.
I'm gonna take a shot at the right on this too. It's not like
Do it.
they're super accepting of rhinos, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Advocating a system in which two or more states, groups, principles, sources of authority coexist. Okay, cool.
Okay. Losing track of truth. Facts get more and more contested. People can't communicate across parallel universes of media. That feels pretty real. Science starts to get jeopardized and politicized. That also feels a little real. Tech gets demonized. This might be
That's true.
A scapegoating of tech companies that might lead to less technological development over the next 25 years.
Yep.
Genetics gets shut down.
Possible.
That's kind of a religious angle on that one. We've seen that before. Nuclear bomb explodes. So I think we've already delved into that one enough.
Yeah. I don't mean that's going to. I don't think that ends it, but yeah, that's a risk. I don't know if it ends it. I think we'd keep on going after that.
And I think that their argument is that actually that would shut down like nuclear energy research that we probably need if we're going to transition off of hydrocarbons. So similar to what happened actually like the first time around when we bombed Nagasaki. Desperate oil states as we shift from carbon to cleaner energy. Who knows what kind of gambles that they might take if their access to power, which is oil, is being jeopardized.
Just before you move on to that point, do you think that like for geopolitical reasons, getting off oil, that seems to be one of the reasons why you get off oil, right? But then if you need a whole lot of these rare earth minerals to jump into batteries, like doesn't that like isn't that in the name the fact that it's rare earth, doesn't that mean that it's hard to find?
I think it's not that they're hard to find, quote unquote. It's that they're so diffused that you have to process a shit ton of materials to get them. So they're rare in the instance of like, a rock has a small amount of it. So like actually like getting a concentrated enough amount to create these batteries or whatever it is you're trying to build just takes a lot of energy to harness it and get it all into one place.
Okay. So they're not abundant.
So they're not abundant. Yeah, they're rare. Balkanized world. This tackling some of these global problems that we've been talking about is probably really complicated if we don't have a kind of globalized approach and uncoordinated like localities arguing about things. China hot war. This is the last one on here. Just basically China and the US battling each other would be detrimental to this great progress.
I think everything except for that last one, we probably overcome and still get there. But that last one, that's civilization destroying if that happens.
Yeah. All right. Now let's bang out Immoderate Greatness. Why Civilizations Fail by William Ophuls.
I like it.
Yeah. It's a nice little short, it's actually pretty well articulated and well reasoned first principles approach. Shout out to my buddy Mike McCoy who gave me this book recommendation. So number one is Ecological Exhaustion. And this guy, Francois Renard de Chateaubriand, I believe his name is said.
Good name.
Yeah. He says, forests precede civilizations, deserts follow them.
Mm.
So the idea is basically like cities are effectively ecological parasites. Like they suck resources like matter and energy into them and away from the hinterlands around them. And they can only exist by exploiting kind of the rural and natural periphery around them. Is like a bacteria in a petri dish that it expands until all the nutrients around it are exhausted and then it collapses. And this is like, he's a historian, actually, this William Ophuls. So he's like looking at Rome, he's looking at all these different civilizations that collapsed and trying to find like what's the common framework. And it's actually sort of a physics approach to it. So number two is exponential growth. And like we kind of all understand this, but he has a couple examples that like really help drive the point home. The first thing is that the amount required to achieve the next doubling in an exponential series is it always has to be slightly larger than the sum of all the previous growth combined, right? So every double effectively requires everything before it plus a little bit more.
What does it require a little bit more?
That's just the math of doubling.
Doesn't it just require the same amount as before?
It's just the math, man. It's the math.
But it does, like, doesn't it just require, which is saying that like that's quite a lot. Like in order to double from here, we've just got to do everything that we've done through the entire history of civilization again, one more time.
Right.
What are we doubling?
Well, hopefully,
what are you interested in hearing?
Hopefully, GDP.
I don't know.
Over,
well,
over
I know something I'd like to double, but
I mean, the answer is GDP if we want to grow out of a lot of these problems that we're facing.
We restructure. That's
it's
the most
striking
American thing ever.
how much that's slowed since. But sorry, keep on going. But that was, I did that Dan Rasmussen stat where he was like 6.3 since the start of the data, and like it's definitely not running anywhere near that at the moment.
Yeah,
we don't have babies and no immigration.
So let's drive this home with like an actual example. So imagine that it's 11 p.m. and we put a single bacterium that divides once per minute into a bottle. And the bottle is sized so that it would be full of bacteria in exactly 1 hour. Okay. So the first question is, when will it be half full?
An hour in?
One doubling
No, wait. Well, I got an hour.
It's 1 hour, right? It's 1
hour.
How
often does it double?
Every minute it doubles.
Yeah. So a minute ago it was half full.
Yeah. So 1 minute to midnight, it's half full. And then on midnight, it's completely full. So now imagine that we wave a magic wand and we make the bottle 4 times larger than it was. How much time have we gained?
2 minutes.
It's almost none. Like 1 minute after midnight, the bacteria will have the new bottle half full. And 1 minute after that, it's completely full, right? So now
this reminds me of Buffett's wealth.
It is. So if the bottle is 32 times larger than our original size, that only buys us 5 minutes past midnight. So this is the issue of exponential growth. If that's what you're trying to do, is that it eventually it collapses under its own weight.
That's why you got to shrink to grow.
Well, that's actually
Shrink
one of his
grow.
takeaways at the end. But
the most civilizations, though, seem to be, well, if we look at around the world at the moment, as countries get richer or as societies get richer, they tend to have fewer kids. So they get to this maintenance level where a couple has a couple of kids, basically, right? So doesn't it kind of I don't know if we're doing that instinctively, but doesn't it seem to suggest that we get to this point where, but that's just replacement, right?
Then we gotta stop eating cows and go to fish, and then Jeremy Grantham will be a happy man.
China's got a demographic issue that's unique to China, but China's about to start shrinking over the next decades as a result of the one-child policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got some desperate kind of superpowers out there. Not great, Bob.
Manish Sharma says sounds like Malthusian broken warnings. Yeah, that was always the argument, right? That food is consumed at a geometric rate, and humans grow at a geometric rate, and we only expand food supply at a arithmetic rate. Have we got that around the right way? Yeah.
You've got it.
Big shout out to Monsanto. Thank you for solving that, despite the fact that people don't like you.
That's right.
Yeah. Fucking people don't think about what the world would be like without Monsanto. They just bitch about what it's like with it.
So speaking of food, number 3, this idea he calls expedited entropy. And basically civilizations grow in population and appetite. And so the demand for agricultural products is bound to increase as this is happening. But the natural state of land is basically incapable of meeting this demand. And so external energy has to be added to boost the yields of that land. And so he says the quantity of energy consumed per unit of output rises higher. Industrialized agriculture is a biological machine that turns petroleum into calories at a ratio of approximately 10-1. So we've talked about this on the show, we're converting oil into food effectively all the time, but it's 10-1 in his estimation. I'm not sure if Vlasov Smeals comes in at that same number, but the idea being that
there's still some loss in the process, right? Whatever Vlasov gets to, it's the ratio might be wrong, but it's something like that. There's a lot of loss in it.
Right. And so he says, you have to think about the energy return on investment, EROI. And that's how much energy does it take to capture the useful energy that we actually use. So it used to take the equivalent of 1 barrel of petroleum to obtain 100 barrels of energy equivalent, right? Because it was so easy to get out of the ground. It was so plentiful. It didn't require any kind of heroic measures to get it. That ratio's declined now to 15-1. And it actually, like, this whole idea of peak oil is sort of like a weird conversation because it has nothing to do with the total quantity. That's less important. What's more important is the net available. So you could have 1 billion barrels of oil, but if it took such Herculean efforts that it required 500 million worth of energy to get them out, now you're down at an EROI of only like 2 to 1, and that's the important number. So basically, like, there's a tendency for civilizations to continue developing despite the fact that they're accumulating a kind of a thermodynamic debt that has to at some point be paid off.
Sounds like a good argument for the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm not kidding.
We do need to give that third mandate to the Fed, it turns out.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
All right. Number 4, excessive complexity. And now we've talked about this on the show as well when we talked about like nuclear accidents and how those come about, and normal accidents in Charles Perrow's framework. But imagine a skilled juggler, and they're very good and they can handle 20 balls at a time, right? But what happens if you throw that 21st ball in? Like, they start getting dropped. And a complex civilization is basically like millions of individuals engaged in this mass mutual juggling act, right? And we saw how that broke down the complexity of all of our supply chains when you threw that ball of, COVID into it.
Well, if you shut it all down, it turns out that it's hard to function. Yeah.
And it's hard to get back going again, right? Like, it's hard to get all the balls coordinated.
Don't shut it all down at once
that's a good
another approach. Yeah.
So problems that once were separate, they actually start to coalesce together in what they call like a problematique. I'd never heard that word before, but it's basically like a nexus of problems that mutually aggravate each other. It's sort of like,
how do I say this?
Synergies. Problematique, like problematique with a ATIQUE at the end of it.
All right, I'm gonna
French
use that
problem.
tonight.
Must be French.
Yeah, I'm gonna
problem.
use that tonight. A problematique. That's what the kids' football team has. They just all suck. You have a problematique.
It might be the coaching. So
hey, now it is.
And then and lastly, so there's all these feedback loops that are operating in nonlinear fashions that lead to chaos. And we've talked about this before, right? Like, systems that they start to become impenetrable, less predictable, less manageable because they start getting so complicated, right? No one can wrap their mind around all these interactions. Number 5 is moral decay. And he kind of breaks this up into ages of, there's the age of pioneers or conquest. That's like the early civilization. Then, things are working and they move into commerce, and then there's affluence, and then intellect, and then finally decadence. And that's what, the moral decay eventually turns into. And then the last one, number 6, is practical failure. And that's when, when the affairs are far from simple and morale is low, selfishness crowds out sacrifice. The interests of the masses and the elites diverge, and the elites themselves are divided into warring factions. And basically, like, planning becomes impossible in the long term. And, expedient decisions abound. Investments in physical and social infrastructure create like entrenched habits and patterns and institutions and ideologies. And basically, like, society becomes very brittle and it starts to break up. And he says governments at that point usually trash their currency. And I'll close this little section with the last thing. He says, it takes protracted hardship to convince people that the world to which they have been accustomed has changed irrevocably. So that is immoderate greatness. And this last little bit, this is the more fun part. Here's your dessert. Have you guys ever heard of Herald camping before?
No. Did he invent camping?
No.
That'd be sweet. Did he invite Camping World?
Founder of Camping World. No,
awesome. Makes sense.
I mean, sometimes you're just born to have to play a role.
Born
right?
to greatness.
Yeah. So Herald Camping and the end of the world. So Harold Camping was the president of the Christian Family Radio Network, and he predicted that the world would end on May 21st, 2011. Now, spoiler alert, that the world didn't end then. But he had, through his reading of the Bible, had teased out that it was going to be 7,000 years exactly after Noah's flood, which would have been 2011 in his, however he figured that out. And of course, being the president of this like radio network, he publicized this coming apocalypse, and lots of people were convinced, and they donated their money, and in some cases, all their worldly possessions to fund this publicity campaign. So there were billboards all around the world. They spent more than $100 million on marketing this.
Fucking stupid.
Like believers quit their jobs, they sold their houses, they liquidated their savings, and all for this May 21st, 2011. And now never mind the fact that he predicted the world's going to end in 1994 at one time, but this time he really meant it. Like, he had the numbers are backing him up. So here's where it gets interesting. Researchers set up tables outside of their gatherings while they were like, having these meetings about it. And a few weeks before that May 21st deadline. And they talked to the faithful who were coming in and out. And these researchers offered them $5 immediately today, or some larger amount in a month, like post the apocalypse. And so they said, like, well, how much would we have to give you for you to forego the $5 today? Is it like $500, $5,000? And they couldn't entice any of them to give them money. Like, that's how, like, to take the bigger payday later. That's how big of, like, how much they believed that the world was really going to end. There was only one person who took them up on their offer. And this was a guy who was like dragged by his friend to the meeting. And he's like, yeah, shit, yeah, I'll take the $5,000 in a month instead of $5 today. But it's easy for us to kind of like poke fun at this now, but and obviously
I would have poked fun at it then. I'll poke fun at it again if somebody's making a prediction of the
There's always a prediction out
yeah.
there.
Well,
fuck these people.
You could say, like, how much rigor and logic did they use to really like come to these conclusions? But I think that we're all guilty of a Herald camping situation in some aspect of our interpretation.
I own
of
cable
the world,
companies.
Right? So I wonder if perhaps just getting smarter is just asking ourselves, like, where's our Herald camping version, where we're not really thinking through as clearly, and where are we hyperbolically discounting? Because that's really, like, it's really rare that you get to see it up close in such a, like, laboratory condition, right? Like, people were believing that the world was ending, and so their discount rate was insanely hyperbolic relative to normal conditions. So I wonder sometimes about, we're talking about nuclear war, we're talking about the end of the world. Like, is there possible that some version of this happens in every bear market where the economy is so scary, like, you want to take that dollar today, even though you know that it's probably worth more in the future, but it's too painful. Maybe it's not going to happen. It's too much fear. And therefore you just punt on it and you sell today. And you're basically hyperbolically discounting, similar to the Herald camping situation.
Stocks are going to zero though. So what do you think about that?
So you got to get your $5 right now and not 5,000 in a month.
Then you'll own all of the stocks.
That's what happens though, right? That's definitely what happens. People will sell out as this goes down, or I guess it's going back up again, so it's time to buy. But
time to buy.
There was that great tweet. I wish I could remember who sent it out. I'll have to track it down, but it was like at the top,
it's Skelly
time horizon expands to infinity, and at the bottom
it shrinks to zero.
Yeah. And I think that's true.
It's quite true.
How do you resist that?
I don't know. I'm the idiot that thinks things aren't so bad. Crazy.
The problem is it's a very mixed bag. And it's probably there are some things that are getting materially better because there was a log jam in many parts of the economy that we're working through that log jam slowly, and we are going to get through that at some point midway through next year or the end of next year or something like that. We're probably pretty much back to normal. But at the same time, we also have probably the economy slowing a little bit because there was all of that stimulus that went through had an effect on asset prices and business and a whole lot of stuff. It's impossible to tease out what all of that implies, because it's such a mixed bag of stuff that's going on. But having said that, I still think we're kind of expensive given where interest rates are for all of that backdrop. Probably need to
reprice.
Where do we need to be? 10 times, 8 times? When are we not expensive? When do people finally say we're not expensive?
Well, we're at like 27 times at the moment.
The homie Rishi said yesterday, right? Interest rates were at 6 when Buffett bought the Washington Post. I think Buffett said 40 times earnings would have been a rational price to pay. So now we're at 4. Not every business is the Washington Post. A lot are, very average. Like where do stocks trade historically? And where's the S&P X FANG?
Well, stocks are traded at 16 and interest rates have settled at 6. And so I guess 16 is roughly the inverse of 6. So I think that's probably how you get there. We're currently at 19.4 on the single year. And I'll give you the Shiller in a moment if I can find it. Here we go. And Shiller's at 27.5, which probably speaks a little bit to the how overclocked a lot of business is on a cyclical basis. We're probably going to come back down a little bit here. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, what, Microsoft 12 times earnings cheap enough for people? 10, 8, 6? Like where should Microsoft trade?
Here's the thing though, when it does get down to that price, you're not going to want to buy it then.
It's not going to get down there.
There's going to be something scary.
It's not
If
gonna
it
get
gets
down
down there, I'd have no money left. I don't even care. I mean,
every
it's
stock
just
will
like
trade at under 10 times earnings at some point in its life.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm sure that's true. Like if you can't look, if you think like value's the place to go, if you can't find something in the UK, if you can't find something in the mortgage industry, if you can't find something in the housing market, if you can't find something in Europe, like what are you doing? And if you don't think that, and you think that quality businesses are the place to be, there's some stuff that's reasonable. Like I don't know. I don't know how cheap it needs to be for people to be like, we can buy.
I agree with all of that. Like forward returns have clearly gone up a huge amount as the market goes down. Like that's the yield is the inverse of the price. Like that's the case. As we've gone down, the forward returns have got better and better. I just think we've been at such a high level relative to the underlying for such a long period of time that people have forgotten what a cheaper market looks like. And I think we could find out again what it looks like, honestly.
What do you think about Einhorn? He was talking about how there's not anyone really left to look at the actual business fundamentals and buy based on that. Or very few people left. And so if they're to get a bid, it used to be that like, value guys were they were like a shock absorber, like a thermostat, like you could only get so far down before the value guys would be like, okay, this is cheap enough for me to buy. And therefore, it would recover from there. Whereas, if that population was decimated for some ecological reason, perhaps low rates, who's left to buy at, like how low does it have to go to create a whole new batch of value investors that want to come off the sidelines? I don't know. It's an interesting.
That's 2 times earnings.
That's the same argument that
thought experiment.
That's Michael Green's argument, though. That's what he says. That value investors get fired.
So does that say infinity or zero? Like, because I don't understand the
two is the answer.
To be fair to Einhorn, what he was saying in that, like everybody grabbed the headline where he says value investing is not going to work anymore. But the full quote, he was very positive about. He was like, "This is going to be great." Like we were paying 9 times for things that we thought were cheap, and now they're at 3 times. Like this is a no-brainer. This is easy game. And I do think there's a lot of it out there. But there's whatever the subsequent return in the stock price is almost irrelevant. Like you're baking in your returns when you buy, like you're getting reinvestment and flows when that's why we're value guys, right? We're looking at the fundamentals. We care about the fundamentals, not the subsequent stock price performance. You're getting all of that baked in when you buy. So like there are very good values out there right now, I do think. And the forward returns are higher than we've seen at any point since this podcast started. So I'm very positive. I think in the short term, though, there's going to be a little bit of chaos, but I don't invest on that basis either. To be fair, I throw all of my money in the market when I get it, wherever it is.
I mean, I don't. I have an emergency. Like if I see risk, I will put this out, and that's not out. Like if I get like, if I really think people are panicking, I'll bet that money, and I'm not betting that money right now. But this is a stupid conversation that people are having about where things are going, what the Fed's doing, all this nonsense that is taking so much time and brain space. Like, look, at the end of the day, the biggest problem right now is the economy is too strong. I gotta think there's some stock that benefits that you can look into that, there's some carnage somewhere. Like, God forbid the Fed ever cuts rates again, the mortgage industry is going to have a massive bounce back. Do I own anything mortgage related? No, fuck no. I wouldn't touch that, but somebody might.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something to do. I know it.
I think there's lots of stuff out there. There's lots of cheap stuff out there.
Yeah. So, I don't know. If there's nuclear war, doesn't matter much.
And it'd be a great buying opportunity.
It's very stimulative.
Super stimulative. But Bill, when you say that the economy's too good right now, what does that mean?
It means that labor isn't cracking, right? I mean, that's what the Fed wants. I know, but like, I mean, look, I'm excited to read the advertising companies. Let's see what the advertising companies are saying. I bet it will be soft.
In the coal mine.
Well, you would think advertising would lead.
I think we'll see. I think they do. There are a lot of layoffs going around, though. We've seen like everybody, Meta, Google, Microsoft, Intel cutting a whole lot of people. Like, those are big numbers. When they cut, it's like thousands.
Yeah. Twitter soon.
Twitter's going to have a lot.
Is Twitter still there? Still going?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if people would stop spending, we'd have less inflation. Tourism, 33%, prices increases and people are spending money like crazy.
Off a bad
and
mark.
They're just,
a low mark.
Still even American is increasing revenue. American sucks. Terrible operators. People still fly them. And it's mostly discretionary. They haven't even had the business return. That's crazy.
What was that Russell Napier? Do you want to talk about that article a little bit? Did you read that, Bill?
No, but I mean, I follow what Napier says. I'd probably follow.
CapEx boom. That's an interesting thesis, huh?
Yeah. Do you want to take a go at articulating what he said?
You would do that, wouldn't you?
What is he saying? Fiscal policy is now has the upper hand, and
central banks are neutered, and it's going to be governments that are going to be allocating capital via guarantees on loans to companies. So keep it off your balance sheet, quote unquote, even though it's really it's kind of a shadow balance sheet liability. But underwriting, like basically like government directing who gets money, and then that's where the economy will morph, and there'll be a big capex boom because of that, like a greening of the economy. Effectively, I think he's mostly talking about, and that everyone's going to be pretty happy about it in the short run because it's going to be very stimulative and look like, like, hey, we've got all this money, but then it will turn out that a lot of that capital will have been misallocated into projects that probably should have never been funded, which is history's got a pretty good track record on governments not being the best cap allocators. And then you end up with stagflation later. But he says any calls for stagflation today are so premature, and that you basically are like a little oblivious to history. And that's going to take a while. But when it does come, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
I got a good line one of my favorite line. Teddy Roosevelt once said that in terms of foreign policy, one should speak softly and carry a big stick. What does it tell you when central banks speak loudly? Perhaps that they're not carrying a big stick anymore.
Yeah.
I thought that was...
Stop paying attention to the Fed.
It's funny because I don't think there's a day that goes by when they don't get some Fed president or...
job owning.
Every day. Really haven't seen collects them as they come through, but it's amazing. Like, is that all they do? Comment to the media? And it seems that they've got different roles, right? It's almost like they're trialing thought balloons, and they just want to see which one gets picked up. Some of them are really bearish, some of them are really bullish, some of them say interest rates are going up, some of them say interest rates are going down. There's no consistency. They all vote consistently, but there's no consistency in the public comments.
It's where we are. We see how the sausage is made and everything now. There's no privacy anywhere.
The fact that
there's no expectation for it.
The sausage is made so haphazardly, so chaotically. I don't know if I want to eat those sausages anymore.
Well, it's always been this way.
Not that I have
you
any
just
choice.
Didn't know it.
That's right.
So
Well, I
who
think
cares?
everybody
Ignorance is
speculated that this
bliss.
is what happened.
I should
But
have taken
nobody-
the blue pill.
Yeah, this isn't like, I don't think this is new. I just think there's 1,000 distribution mechanisms now, and everybody can say what they think. I'm on a podcast. Who the hell am I?
Plug me back into the matrix.
Did it on a podcast.
Yeah.
I want to come back as someone important, like a podcaster.
Please. YouTube influencer.
Influencer. Is there a worse insult, really? That's just, there's nothing that anybody can say to you that's worse than that.
How dare you, sir?
Yeah, that was my aspirational goal, man.
Hit us with some questions. Let's.
Well, we will.
You read that,
barely
like,
answer them.
if you read the banks, I mean, consumer balances are hanging in there. They're probably going to come down, but like, I don't know. I kind of making jokes about American, but they're saying like, yeah, I don't think earnings have officially been released. I don't know if it was a pre-release or whatever, but they're saying like business travel is not even back, and revenues are up 13% on 10% fewer flights. Like, people are eating these costs and they continue to spend. I mean, so I don't know, how bad is it?
So it's
Now, somebody's going to say, well, it's just not bad yet, Brewster. You don't understand how bad it's going to be. Well, I've been hearing that since Omicron came, right? And I've been hearing that we're going to kick the can down the road.
I haven't heard for a while.
The whole time, right? Like, it feels like I'm just living Groundhog Day, and maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know how it feels to have something hell unfold over 18 months.
We've seen some stuff in this since this podcast has been alive. Like, we started out 2019. We've seen the COVID crash.
The world was a kinder, gentler place back then.
No, it wasn't. We saw the COVID crash, and we saw that monster sugar rush run where everybody was in the markets, and now we've seen like we're in one of the worst drawdowns
to each other.
We're in one of the worst. Yeah,
I'm still gonna buy one of those. I'm waiting.
Did you get a Bored Ape? Yeah, that's what I want.
No. I said I'm gonna buy it really cheap or really expensive. I'm waiting for really cheap.
Are you tracking that market? Because I heard that they were like, you could get them for like $70 something now. Like, isn't that's about the price?
$70, getting closer. I wouldn't mind $5.
Ouch.
No, just
so
you
wait,
can afford
like
70.
taking the family to
I don't wanna spend
Chipotle
70.
is a $70 adventure, but the Bored Ape thing is not worth the.
I don't know. I still think that community's probably got cool stuff going on. I'm not trying to shit on them, but I don't want to spend $70 on it.
They got a I don't know which.
But you were this close when it was 25,000.
No, I wasn't.
Whichever group investigates
but-
the securities, I forget who it is. I don't know if it was the New York Attorney General or if it was the SEC or who went after these guys.
We
But
don't have anybody in that role.
The sheriff has sent them a letter anyway, asking them for
what?
I don't know what, a response, I guess, to show why it's not securities offering.
Oh, I think it probably is, right?
That's the past.
Tech,
This
bro.
Is the future. We're
Tech, bro.
where
is
we're
funny how
going. We don't need regulations.
It's weird how they go after this stuff so far after the fact. Like, where were these guys a year ago when this stuff was at the absolute roaring peak of, like, that was about a year ago that stuff was. Where were they then? Why are they doing it now? Like, everybody's already busted on that stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's already lost their money.
The barn already burned down. The horse is gone.
There's no horse.
Well, you don't want it to happen.
There was never
again,
any
I
horse.
guess.
It's an interesting. I mean, that same thing happens with stocks too, right? Like, it completely melts down, and then they come in and like look for the bodies that are charred.
Is that because you've got damages then? You can show the damages. But then aren't they, as the regulator,
not
shouldn't
their
they be
job.
like front running that stuff? I mean, they blocked that Bitcoin ETF for so long. It's strange to me that for whatever reason, that's the thing that hangs them up. There's like so many worse ETFs out there.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
You can speculate on Bitcoin all you want in
But
any
not an
brokerage
ETF.
account, but not through an ETF wrapper.
We
Yeah,
gotta
that
protect
doesn't make
people.
sense. The derivative is the security. That's
Yeah.
kind of wild.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I think we solved the world's problems, gents.
It's all going to
Certainly identified some of them.
Where are you guys at on? We've done two polar opposites. Last week it was greatness and progress, and this week it was calamity. Like, where are you falling on the spectrum now?
Hell is coming.
I'm very, very positive on humanity, the Western world, and the future. I think, given the trend in technology and most things, we're always gradually getting better. Every single point.
Easy to say when you can bug out to Australia.
Well, Australia's got its own problems, but and those flights to Australia, I had to give a pint of blood. I had to give 5 pints of blood to get those tickets.
Yeah,
to
but when
Australia.
you get there, your dollar is going to be so strong that you're going to
first time ever.
a
bring the pain.
mutual friend of ours who's Australian said that you're going to be coming back in December and you're going to be like a conquering, returning king with your strong dollar, just murdering everybody in Australia.
I would love it because I've been back there when it was the other way around, when it was the US dollar was 50 cents to the dollar Aussie, and Australia's expensive. So every time they tend to pay a living wage to people who work in cafes. So everything's like $30
cappuccino, $30 flat
caps.
white.
I don't know. Yeah, flat. That's right.
Dudes, I got to
I'm
bounce.
positive.
But my answer is, as long as we realize that we are not each other's enemy, I'm pretty positive. If
We are not.
we don't get past some of this political nonsense, then I'm less positive.
Agreed.
Amen.
Let's call it. Thanks, fellas. This was fun. We'll be back at the